Welcome back to the Limitless podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about all things Agile, starting with explaining a bit what Agile actually means, and then transitioning into the topic of Agile transformation and what the difficulties are related to this. In this context, we are also going to explore how to prepare people for this kind of transformation with trainings, for example, and how they can have an impact beyond the training room in real life and on actual business. Today, we have a very interesting guest. Sorry, my bad. Today, we have two very interesting guests for this topic. I'm very happy to have Simona and Dan with me, representing Colors in Projects, and who will reveal the mystery behind serious games. If you've never heard about it, you are in for a treat. Welcome, Simona and Dan.
Thank you, Sasha. We are happy to be here.
I'm glad you could join us. And since we are not a dedicated podcast channel for Agile people, I would like to start a bit with setting the foundation and helping people understand what Agile actually means in simple words. I know it's a topic that we could discuss all day long, and personally, I would be happy to do so, but let's try to keep it practical and simple. How would you explain what Agile actually means?
Well, I will start. So, in simple terms, Agile is a way of working, and a way of working where teams deliver small pieces of value frequently. They learn from feedback and they adapt as they go. So instead of trying to plan everything in detail from the very beginning, teams work in short working cycles. They build something that's useful. They show it to stakeholders, to their customers, to the final users, and then adjust the next steps based on what they learned. So the focus is less on following a rigid plan and more on learning quickly and improving continuously while the work progresses, of course.
Okay, this sounds a little bit like what people and children naturally do, right? So if a child tries to do something or learn something, they're not going to make a big master plan and have every step lined out. They will go ahead, try something, see if it works, and if it doesn't, try it in a different way.
Yeah, that's true. But when we talk about kids, they fail a lot, but the consequences for their failures are positive consequences. Everybody's happy, everybody's excited. They encourage those kids to make another mistake if you want, or to fail again, which is kind of different when we become adults. We don't want to fail. We don't like to fail. So that's why it is not so easy to embrace this way of working.
But it can be also, sorry, it can be also very fun. And I especially like the comparison with a cook who is cooking following a recipe, and that would be the traditional predictive approach. And you know exactly which are the quantities, how to mix them, and you follow the recipe. And it might end up with a very good food or not. But if you are agile, it's more about experimenting, about tasting the result. And if it's not the most tasty one, then you adjust. And I think that I really like this comparison because it shows that you have the flexibility. And the most important thing for you is not following a recipe, but having a great food at the end. And this is the value that Agile brings, because we are not using Agile because of Agile. Agile is not the purpose. Agile is the way in order to obtain a business value.
I understand. And this also raises a question, actually, because as you pointed out correctly, for adults, it's sometimes difficult to embrace this idea, this culture of failure being something positive or potentially being positive. And I think for companies, it's even worse or even harder, because in many companies, you have this culture that failing is bad, right? You're not supposed to fail. And this leads to people trying to hide their failures rather than owning them and learning from them.
Yeah, most of the companies, the worst thing that you can do is to fail. So you have to try to identify all important risks and to be prepared for everything that could have a negative impact on your project or on your company at all. Which is a very safe and healthy mindset. But when we think that we are living in very uncertain times, very dynamic times, a lot of ambiguity, so in this case we don't have the answer from the very beginning, so we have to experiment a lot.
Mm-hmm. So what is it actually that Agile as such was trying to solve? Because at some point, late 90s, some people got together and said, the way we're doing things right now is not working. We need something else. But what exactly is it that we're trying to solve with this new idea of working in an Agile way?
Yeah.
I think that the answer refers very much to the budget. Do we want to risk the whole budget and to discover after 1 year or 18 months that basically the result is not the one that we expected? Or do we want to discover this after a month or 2 months or 3 months? And then the budget which is at the risk is the budget for 3 months and not the budget for 18 months.
Mm-hmm. And then I suppose there was also a kind of more human aspect to it, because we know that this initially came from the software development world, right? And I also experienced it myself because I'm old enough to have been working before Agile. I also experienced myself that with the traditional waterfall approach, people were very often frustrated because they spent a lot of time working on something and then very late, somebody came back and said, yeah, but that's actually not what I wanted. And apart from the financial impact, which of course was big, there was also the human level where people just said, come on, you're telling me this now, 1 year later?
Yeah, that was the problem, that we had only a single point of failure, and that was at the end of the project. It wasn't in the meantime. And one thing I remember I was very frustrated about was that at the end, when we presented the final product to our customers, they used to say, oh, with Excel it went better. We could use Excel in a better way than your software. And we were very frustrated because what we did was something customized, personalized, based on their needs. And we thought that it's exactly what they needed, they expected to have.
Yes, Excel is a classic. Excel can do everything, just like PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so in a nutshell, the idea behind Agile was making things that are difficult to predict, especially long-term, a bit more safe in terms of financial impact or wasted efforts, but also making it more rewarding to work on something. Because if you get your feedback faster and you can correct more easily in whatever direction you need to go, you also, as a person, feel better because you know what you're doing suddenly has a purpose that you can understand, that you can grasp. So shorter feedback circles, consistent output of value, which for the customer also is an advantage because they get value faster, and this value can already work for them while we are working on the next step, on the next delivery for them. Okay, so if we say that this was the idea of Agile, yes?
I would like to mention here something, because when we used to hear very, very often that it's faster, and very, very often our customers, our clients, the companies we are working with, they think that developing products in an agile way, it will need less time and less effort to build a product that than in the case of using a predictive approach. And it's not true. We actually need more time and more effort, but what is smaller is the time to market. So we deliver faster, but not the entire product, but parts, very important parts of that product.
Sure. Yes, with this partial delivery, you can have something on the market much faster, even if it's not the full solution yet. Okay, so if we see that this is Agile in simple terms, and again, we could have a whole session just about this topic, but let's try to move on a bit. Obviously, Agile and working in an Agile way has its advantages. So why is it so difficult for companies to turn or to transition from the traditional approach, doing it in the waterfall way or the predictive way, as you call it, towards working in an Agile way? What are the main issues these companies experience?
Well, there are several, so I will start with the first one, and then Dan could continue. One of the important aspects is that when you start working in a new way, you are not completely focusing on changing the habits or changing the way of working. You are still required to deliver something. So you have, instead of just focusing on the delivery, you have now two areas of focus. We need to deliver, but we need to work in a different way. And therefore, the pressure on the employees, the pressure on the team members is double. They still need to deliver, but in a different way. So that would be one of the issues that we encounter in many times when we talk about Agile transformation within a company.
Yeah, another thing is that sometimes the project team members, those who need to work in an agile way, they feel that they lose control on their projects because they need to know from the very beginning every step they have to go through. And if they don't, they just have in their mind is very clear what they have to do in the next step. And what happens after that, it depends. It depends on the feedback. It depends on, I don't know, many other things that could appear. This is somehow stressful, isn't it? Because you don't. Also, the level of predictability is pretty low, at least at the beginning of a project, and after that it increases, going through the life cycle of the project. This is also a challenge.
And there is also the trap of trying to follow some specific practices of a certain framework instead of thinking on the principles and on the mindset and trying to follow what is worth and what is valuable for that team and that organization. So sometimes it's really difficult because you learn the practices and it's easy. Scrum says we need to plan, then we need to work, and then we have the review, and then we have the retrospective. And we try to follow mechanically all those practices, hoping that we will get better results. And it's not about the practices.
Yes, I fully agree. So these are actually interesting points. Very quickly, so regarding your first point, that people have then this double effort of still working and producing and delivering, while at the same time trying to learn and understand and adjust to a new way of working. I mean, let me be a bit provocative, but to me, this sounds like management failure, right? Because if I am in charge of an organization and I want this organization to transition to whatever, in this case, Agile working, then I also need to accommodate for this kind of transition. I cannot reasonably expect people to be just as productive as they have been before. I should expect that there's at least a sort of transition period where the effort of learning and adapting will have an impact on our productivity.
That's a great point, Sasha. Could you talk with the management of the companies?
Yeah,
because they see Agile like a magic wand. Yes. Yeah, you went to a 2 days training, you learned about Agile, now you need to come back and to do miracles.
Yes, I understand. I admit I also made this experience myself. And this also brings me a bit to the third point you mentioned, that people just follow the practices mechanically. And that's from my point of view, one of the biggest mistakes you can do when you're trying to adapt any kind of framework or approach. And every time when I give a safe training or a safe workshop, what I always tell people is that they have to see it as a toolbox, right? You have there many, many tools in there, but it does not mean that you need to use every tool every single day for every single problem. It's very much like at home. At home, I have a hammer and a screwdriver and a power drill, which I need more or less frequently. But then there are certain tools in my garage, which, I need maybe once a year. But when I need it, I'm very glad that I have them. So I think people should try to see it more like this and not mechanically follow something just because it's in some sort of process description or on a nice diagram.
So yeah, I think that Dan loves this discussion about practices over mindset very much.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the main problem is that all of us are looking for best practices, for some shortcuts, and to apply them again and again and again. We are looking for that silver bullet that solves everything. And the managers do the same thing. And another problem, I have to mention this, there are so many companies who promise that miracle. They promise that when we come and let us supervise the agile transition, the agile transformation in your company, the productivity will grow immediately, everything will go better. So we have also those promises.
Yes, so unrealistic expectations, which are often driven by very sales-oriented companies, let's put it this way. Yeah, that's obviously a problem. I always tell people that there are no best practices, there are only good practices. And what I also tell people is that there is probably no two companies in the world doing Agile in exactly the same way. Which, again, in my opinion, is exactly how it should be, because it's not a recipe, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, that's true. I also used to teach at the Faculty of Mathematics and Computer Science, and I have this course, Agile Software Development for Master Program. And I used to ask my students about the methodology they use, how they work in their projects, in their companies. Most of them are already employed, And I always receive the same answer. I get the same answer. They mention, most of them mention Scrum, others mention Kanban or SAFe. But after mentioning a specific methodology, they say, but it's not by the book. It's not as it should be. And I tell them it's normal. That's what Agile means. It's different in every company based on their, organizational culture, based on the project type or customer needs. But they are somehow frustrated because they don't work in a pure Agile environment, So it comes also from our expectations. We expect to have these best practices, these tools.
Yes. So obviously there are many different reasons why an Agile transformation can be difficult and even fail. Without blaming anybody directly, but generally speaking, do you think they're mostly structural or cultural or indeed leadership driven or caused by leadership/management decisions?
Well, there are several research trying to figure out which is the main blocker. And mostly the answers are related to the company culture, definitely, organizational culture, but also the problem of the leadership. So sometimes, meaning that sometimes the leadership expect the teams to be able to do the transformation by themselves. After going to a training, they learn, and then they are allowed because they learn that self-organizing, self-managing team, it's an important concept. So do whatever you want, but become Agile. And it doesn't work. You cannot have Agile islands within the company. So, okay, you can have it, but only at the very beginning. If we have several teams working Agile, then you also need a structure at the level of the organization. And this is already the leadership responsibility. So yes, it could be the organizational culture, but definitely leadership plays a very important role in it.
Yeah, I want to add something here. It's kind of fun because there is something interesting that I often see in Agile or leadership trainings. So the participants sometimes tell us these ideas are great, but it would really help if you could also present them to our managers. So somehow the message behind this is that they feel some changes need to come from higher levels in the organization. Now the funny thing is that we have been working with some organizations for more than 10 years, and during this time some of the participants we trained in the past have actually become managers. But today their teams sometimes tell us exactly the same thing. It would be good if you could also explain this to our managers. And for me, this shows how difficult it is to change mindsets and how difficult it is to change ways of working inside these organizations. It also shows how important leadership is, as Simona said. Real change usually requires not only new practices, but also different way of thinking at multiple levels of the organization. And this is not easy at all.
Yes, very true. Which brings me actually to my next question. So what is it that Colors in Projects does to help companies in this situation? And what is the philosophy behind it? I mean, apart from the fact that Colors in Projects is a very catchy name and draws attention, what is behind it?
Well, let me explain first the idea of colors in projects. I always experienced the fact that in projects, people thought only in black and white. And basically, there are a huge number of gray areas, but there are also a lot of different perspectives. And I think that those different perspectives from people who are very much oriented on structure, people that are, I don't know, for them important is the planning. There are others which are creative, others that would like to bring innovation in their projects. For others matters the team and the way that there is a cohesiveness in those teams. And I think that all these elements, they bring a lot of colors in the world of projects and project management. So this is why we said, okay, we do not want boring white and black projects. We would like to recognize the importance of different perspectives, and this is why we thought about colors in projects. Now, this would be the explanation for the name. What do we bring? There are several aspects, of course. I will also leave Dan to add some of the elements. But I think that what we would like to bring is the practical experience of our trainers. We are not just trainers. Each of us, we are working in projects, we are involved in working with teams in order to deliver results, and therefore we understand what are the issues, what are the different problems that one team or one organization can experience during this journey. So we are not talking from books, we are talking considering the experience. And basically, if you think about a training, just remember, when do you learn? When you have a huge a huge slide deck, or when you try to experience something. So we come to our trainings with this part of experiencing with games, with simulations that help participants to live and to have the emotion and to remember that emotion later.
So we also bring colors in trainings, huh?
So
Try to.
now you made it easy for me because you just mentioned that you bring games. And when I first time saw your idea of serious games, I was immediately intrigued. So maybe you could explain us a little bit what serious games are, how you use them, how they help you with what you're doing.
Well, by definition, a serious game is an activity that looks like a game. So it's structured like a game, but it is designed to help people understand a concept or a behavior that is important in real work. So in the agile training, for instance, these games simulate situations like prioritization, estimation, collaboration, dealing with uncertainty, things like that. And the participants usually work in small teams. They have to make decisions under certain constraints. And because they experience the situations directly, the learning becomes much more natural. And there is a quote I like. It's from, let me remember his name, Harold Eugene Egerton. He said, the trick to education is to teach people in such a way that they don't realize they are learning until it's too late. And I love this quote. So serious games work exactly like that, you know. People think that they are just playing, but in fact they are discovering important ideas about how teams and projects really work.
So, yes, go ahead.
And it is also important that when we talk about games, usually the goal is entertainment. When we talk about serious games, the goal isn't entertainment, even if the activity is playful. The goal is learning through action. And this means that participants can make decisions, they can negotiate, they can prioritize, deal with constraints or whatever, and then see the consequences of their choices in real time. And in 20, 30 minutes, they often experience dynamics that would otherwise take, I don't know, months to appear in real project setting. So they deal with misalignments, with bottlenecks, with unclear priorities. And somehow this serious game turns all the theory into a very safe, let's call it miniature version of reality. And it comes also with the emotion. And you will remember the emotion. You do not remember 20 slides with a theoretical approach.
Yes, I can understand that. So I'm pretty sure that this helps people with not just learning, but also remembering things better. I mean, you have been doing this for a long time, right? Do you have any results or data that supports this and confirms that people actually memorize it also long-term much better?
Well, we have, there are not our research, but they are research that shows that simulation activates the brain very differently. Somehow, theoretical slides speak mostly to the analytical part of the brain. Simulation, which involve decision-making, interaction, and sometimes even a bit of competition, they activate different areas of the brain. And we have participants who, when we meet after, I don't know, a while, they remember the games that we play and that the fact that they had an aha moment. The aha moment doesn't come from the theoretical approach. The aha moment comes when you have this opportunity to make a mistake, discover something yourself, and that lesson sticks.
And that concept. I heard that simple idea that stayed with me from one video. Knowledge is not understanding. So knowledge is not the same as understanding. And one reason slides are not so effective is that they usually deliver knowledge, but not necessarily understanding. You can know a concept because you saw it on a slide, but of course that doesn't mean you truly understand how it works in practice. So you have to do something in order to
Yes, that's actually a very good distinction. And also, I mean, what we as humans have learned in the meantime is that we are not very good at absorbing information in this confrontational way, where some smart guy is standing in front telling everybody else what they're supposed to learn and to know, but that indeed, via interaction, via games, via playing, we simply grasp even complex or especially complex topics much better and faster. I mean, there's a reason why kids learn that way as well. I'm coming back to the kids because I think it's really similar. They don't read a book about how to build something in the sandbox, right? They just go out there and do it and try it and experience it.
And another thing is that a game is a safe to play or safe to fail environment, let's say. So it's safe when you play a game to experiment a lot of things.
I'm a bit curious because I occasionally try to have some games in my workshops as well, not necessarily as a teaching experience, but sometimes just to, loosen up a bit. And yes, there are some games which also help with understanding the material. But do you have the experience that, especially in the beginning, people are very hesitant to engage in these games? Or are they all like, oh, excellent, there's a game, let's play?
There is a science behind allowing participants to play during a training session. You need to take it step by step. So you need to warm them up to make them feel that it's a safe environment. So you cannot just go there in front of the participants and tell them, okay, we start to play. Because sometimes you deal with experienced people, very serious people. So hesitant would be an understatement. So you need to build this environment in which they are ready to play very carefully. It's not easy, but it's learnable. We start with an icebreaker, but even in our case, the icebreaker are not just for fun. And this is a lesson that I learned from Dan. Dan is a very serious person. So if you ask Dan to start playing, let's say, an icebreaker, but without an idea, without learning something from that experience, Dan is going to be very disappointed. So I learned from him that even the smallest icebreaker needs to transmit something to participants.
Yeah, I think that right now at Scholarship Projects, all of us are actually very strict about this. So we try to avoid using games that are only fun or energizing, but cannot be connected in a deep way with the concepts we teach. Of course, energy in the room is nice, but the main goal is learning, isn't it? So if a game cannot really support the concept we want to explain, we usually prefer not to use it.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I have just one quick follow-up question out of personal interest, because like I said, when I'm doing workshops, mostly they are with people in a technical domain, like software developers, testers, project managers, these kind of people. And quite many of them tend to be introverted, you may want to say. So they're not naturally outgoing and standing up, interacting with people. They're usually the ones that if they go to a party, they try to stay a bit more at the side, having their drink and, trying not to be bothered or bother anybody. How do you bring these people into the games?
We ask them to work in teams. So there are only very few activities that we have with individual activities. They need to work in teams, and usually there is a small competition, which does the trick. So it initiates the motivation on doing something, especially because you are not by yourself, you are with a team, and the results of the team depends on the results of all of the team members. And this helps a lot. And also it helps if the games are somehow related to their specific activities. And for us at Colors, it was really a fun and entertaining activity to start developing games, learning games, serious games. And we have a number of card games which are basically extremely useful during the trainings.
I think they also love playing board games, and many games we use in our trainings are similar with a regular board game. And I remember one joke from the past about the difference between an introvert software developer and an extrovert software developer. Do you know it? The extrovert software developer will look at your shoes, but will talk with you, not at his own shoes. So that's the difference. Yeah, and it's right. Sometimes they want to stay just to hear and internalize and think and analyze the things we say in those trainings. But in time, you can see them enjoying playing these activities.
So, coming back to a bit more serious question again, if you're talking to companies who either want to start an agile transformation or are in the middle of one and it's not going great, what is it that you tell them to do first? What is your starting point usually in order to make this a success eventually?
They need to understand why do they want to do it, first of all. And that would be the first thing that we ask them, to define what are the objectives of bringing Agile within their organization. And it's not just identifying it and putting in a slide. This needs to be communicated again and again and again and again, because people, each time when they are forced to change something, they will naturally ask, why should we do it? And this is why, and we also have an interesting experience with a company who went through a transformation, and it was a very smart management team. They started the Agile transformation by understanding themselves, what is Agile, how it works. After going through a training, 1 year later, they decided, okay, let's do it. So they really thought about it. But when we started to work with the teams, we started with a training, and immediately the next day after the training, we started working with the team, helping them to put everything that they learned into practice. And again and again, we had this question, but why do we need to use Agile? And then we reminded them that, you know, the management team showed you a slide in which basically they defined the objective. Yeah, we thought that it's only corporate, blah, blah. So they need a little bit of time, more time, to understand that this is something that the organization seriously thought about, and it's worth spending time in trying again and again how to do it, because basically the management team understood that there are benefits in this day-by-day struggle.
Very good. I have a question that I ask all my guests, if it fits. And this is for the people listening to us right now. There will be quite a few, I suppose, who are either going through a transformation or suffered through one, or maybe will be facing one soon. But this is a large enterprise, a large task, right? So is there something that we can give our listeners today that could help them in their daily practical life already, let's say tomorrow or next week? Some tip that we can give them that they can practically apply in order to improve their situation at their work. Do we have something?
Should I go first, Dan?
Yeah, of course.
There is a concept that I like very much. The difference between Agile adoption and Agile transformation. And I use the comparison between a decent coffee that you can make at home and becoming a barista and prepare the best coffee in the town. You shouldn't go to become barista from the beginning. A decent coffee could be everything that you need in the beginning. So don't try to implement everything that you learned about Agile. You could start step by step, maybe 10% of what you learn that it's out there in the world of Agile. And then you see if it fits, if it works, and then you add 10 more percent. Maybe you start with, I don't know, defining the roadmap and learning how to work with a story map and defining the MVP. Then maybe you start working in iteration and try to see if planning and review is for you. Then maybe you add a retrospective. You shouldn't do everything from the very beginning because it's going to be overwhelming. So just step by step. That would be my advice. So Dan, it's your turn now.
Dan?
I will use the words of somebody else who is smarter than me. So I also will tell you a quote I love, and it comes from Neil Ford. And he said, he once said in one conference, yesterday best practices are tomorrow empty patterns. In this dynamic world, in this very complex, with a lot of ambiguity, a lot of volatility, it's very important to understand these things. So again, coming back to that need, we have to find and identify best practices, those things that work no matter what. They don't exist, and just because the world becomes more and more VUCA, and there are less and less tools or practices like that.
Yeah, we should end the podcast right now because I cannot possibly say anything smarter than that. So in any case, we're at the end of our time. I had a very interesting time. It was a very interesting discussion for me. I hope the two of you also enjoyed it, and of course our listeners. So thank you very much for being with me today.
Thank you for the invitation, Sasha. It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. And who knows, maybe we meet each other very soon.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.